Many Knittax machines use a little yarn bowl that travels along with the carriage and includes the tensioner. Let's quickly define a Knittax machine. You're looking at several models, but the first one belonging to me is labeled Knit King. This can be a little bit confusing because Knit King may also refer to some machines that are just like the Brother family, but this one is like a Knittax, and this is the kind of machine we're talking about today. I'm fortunate enough to have the original yarn bowl and tensioner in good shape, but unfortunately many people don't. This hole fits onto this post on the carriage, so it's a very specific joining and not easy to come up with a DIY substitute. It's a terrible thing to have a knitting machine that you can't use because there's no way to carry the yarn. And some time ago, I invented this. I have used it on machines that I bought that were mastless, as well as on machines that customers sent us for repair, forgetting to send the mast along. And it has worked well on everything, so I was wondering if it would work well on the Knittax. And today's movie is about testing that and giving you some pointers. I'll tell you in advance that it does work well enough that I do suggest you make one for yourself, and I will put a link to the movie about making one in the program notes. I made the first version, and mine was a glorious thing full of duct tape. In the movie, Jack is taking my version and making it better and explaining what you need and how to proceed. Another aspect of the question is whether coned yarns will actually work on a Knittax, because it was designed with hand knitting yarns in mind. So I tested several, and I'm going to report on the results. I used Tam BB, then I tried 3 strands of industrial yarn run together, and finally Tam Diamante. Starting out with the Tam BB, I'm going slowly because I don't actually have the machine clamped down. I'm bracing it with the hand that's not pushing the carriage. And I will own up to the fact that some of my sinkers are still sticking. You'll see a couple standing up. They ought not to be. We're still working on getting this machine back to work after a rest. And to make the test possible, I lubricated everything and then just situated my swatch in between the 2 sinkers that were sticking, so they could be naughty quietly to themselves and we could have our test. We'll come back to them and get firm another day. Tam BB is a little bit fuzzy, and it knitted pretty well, but I did notice a tendency for it to stick inside the yarn feeder. The fuzzy little hairs were catching on the inside a little bit, and it makes loops. You'll see one forming or trying to form. I think I just need to lubricate the inside of the yarn feeder, because when I did, it did perform better. However, I don't think this machine really loves Tam BB, and it wouldn't be my first choice. Next experiment is the 3 strands of industrial thin yarn tied together, and I joined them onto the strand of Tam BB with a knot. In real life, of course, this is not something that you would do, but I wanted to see if the machine would put up with it. Miraculously, it did. This actually knitted more easily than BB, but you just saw an issue developing. When you use 3 strands together, some machines just treat it like one and don't even notice the difference. This is not one of those machines. I think the feeder on the carriage is a little bit roomy to allow this to be a good thing. A Passip will do it beautifully, as will a Superba and usually Brother. But thin industrial yarns are a super economical way to get a lot of yarn and get it adjusted to the exact weight you wanted. So I kept on fooling around with it and discovered there is a way to make it work. You don't want the machine to skip knitting a strand for any stitches at all, as it did there. It makes sort of a mess. But I discovered that a little bit of manual manipulation now and then to make sure that all 3 strands were starting each row at the same exact time made it possible to get a nice fabric out of the 3 strands of industrial yarn. Remember, the jerkiness of my knitting is only due to my laziness in not clamping the machine down. I found that I didn't actually have to manipulate the yarn every row. if I watched closely. Only when the yarns started to separate did it become something that I needed to do. And they didn't do it every single row. So with some attention, I was able to get 20 nice, neat rows of knitting. The third try was Tam Diamante. This is the smoothest of all the yarns and also a little bit thinner than the other two. It knitted the most easily with the least fuss, no looping, no misbehavior, and that's a nice dress yarn or a yarn for nice pants. It made an excellent fabric without any fuss. So, to answer the question, yes, you can use this as a substitute yarn carrier, and yes, you can use coned yarn on the machine, even using 3 strands of industrial together if you take some precautions. So I'm off to find my clamps. I'm tired of holding the machine with main strength, and I will put a link to the movie about making yourself a substitute yarn mast in the program notes. I know it's humble, but it's been doing a great job for me for more than a decade.